We'll be a couple of minutes. Friends, morning, morning. Can I bring you to order? Colleagues, can I welcome you back to our third and final day of Scottish Labour Party Conference 2025. Can I take the opportunity to thank you all for contributing to what has been a fantastic weekend, and I'm hoping I'm not going to get any points of order that the conference hall's too warm today, because we've tried to address your concerns. And I hope you enjoyed last night. Anna's played some banging tunes for sure, but my goodness, who knew Claire Baker was such a dynamite DJ? And sadly, comrades, I have to tell you, what goes on in the photo booth doesn't stay in the photo booth. So your participation and engagements in our debates and sessions has shown the richness and passion of our members. And it's been a great weekend so far, and let's go out on a high. Conference, can I ask Eileen Dinnan, Chair of the Conference Arrangements Committee, to make her third and final report to conference? Thank you.
Morning, conference. Just double checking that I don't pick up the Prime Minister's speech here. I see you're all looking nice and bright and sharp and sparkling. Although I have to say, if anybody thinks that drinking pink cocktails and the idea of a pink drink's a good idea, well, that's up to you. That's all I can say. As Simon says, welcome to the final day of conference, and I hope you agree it's been a fantastic weekend, really positive. There have been fantastic speeches from Anas, Jackie, but also from people who participated in this conference throughout the weekend. And that includes those that participated in the fringe meetings as well. I think it's important that it's a big, important part of conference, the fringe meeting. So this morning, we will hear from our Labour Prime Minister. Who's called Keir Starmer, by the way, okay? And we're only able to do so due to the phenomenal hard work, not just of members in this room, but from everybody across the party. It was an unbelievable turnout. It was an unbelievable event. And, you know, there is a bit of sacrifice that goes on, but my goodness me, how worth it was it that we are where we are. After Keir's speech, we will move on to our final debate of the weekend, a new direction for people and planet. Now, I've emphasised throughout the conference, if delegates can please keep to time, that includes me, okay? It's only fair to all members if speakers taking extra time make it harder from calling more speakers. As noted in the report, the card vote on the constitutional amendments yesterday was passed unanimously by conference. And finally, on behalf of the Conference Arrangements Committee, can I thank you for your cooperation in allowing this to be an amazingly successful conference. So for the final time this weekend, I move the Conference Arrangements Committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen, and can I thank you and the CAC for all the work you do on our behalf. Conference, content to accept the report? Thanks very much. Conference, can you now welcome to the stage Neil Cafferty?
Thank you very much. My name is Neil Cafferty, and last year I voted for a Labour government. And to give you a little bit of background about me, I'm 25 and I work as an apprentice draftsman for Holland & Wolff / Navantia UK. I left school at 17 and I went to Fife College to study engineering. Once I finished my HNC computer-aided design course, I then moved to New College, Lanarkshire in Motherwell to obtain my HND computer-aided design. I started my apprenticeship at Holland & Wolff in 2021, working at our on-site drawing office in Methil. Thank you. My qualification gives me a good grounding in computer-aided design, and I was mentored by highly skilled and experienced personnel. I have been an apprentice at Holland & Wolff for 3 years, and I am still learning, but my experience in Methil has been varied as the company works in both the clean maritime and renewables industries. As I'm sure you're all aware by now, the site has been through a challenging period in the recent past. But thanks to the hard work of great people in Methil like Matt Smith and Fred Dardas, and the work by this Labour government to facilitate the sale of the business to Navantia UK. Over 1,000 highly skilled jobs like mine in Methil, Arnish, Appledore and Belfast are now secure. All 4 facilities will benefit from Navantia's extensive expertise in shipbuilding, fabrication, complex programme management. This will support a highly skilled workforce and robust supply chain right across the United Kingdom. With the investment being made by Navantia UK, the 4 sites will be transformed into world-class facilities, and they'll be ready to deliver Labour's ambition to reach 60 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030 and play a key role in Labour's industrial strategy by boosting sovereign defence manufacturing for the Royal Navy. I would like to end my short speech today to say on behalf of everyone in Methil, thank you to the Labour Government for the determined hard work at all levels in securing our future with Navantia UK. And now I am delighted to introduce to the stage the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.
Of Scotland. We'll serve every single person in Scotland because that change matters to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, conference. Thank you so much. It's really good to be back. I have to admit that after the rugby yesterday, I was a little bit nervous about coming out, but you have to let us have that one. Look, England victories are about as rare as the SNP in Westminster these days, so we've got to have that one, I'm afraid. And thank you, Neil. That was really fantastic to hear your story, telling it from up here. It's really hard to do that. You absolutely smashed it. And Neil's mum is here today. You must be so proud, and rightly so. Neil, you're showing what a Labour government can do. Saving Harland and Wolff, supporting Scottish jobs, securing the future of Scottish shipbuilding. Conference, that's the difference that Labour makes. And we can only make that difference because of your hard work. I saw it right here in Glasgow when we kicked off the election. I've seen it right across Scotland, in the campaign, of course, but beyond that. Everything the Labour movement has achieved, past and future, everything, comes from the efforts of its people. So that victory in July, conference, that's your victory. It belongs to you. You changed the future of our country, and I say to you, thank you for your hard work. Because of your work, Scotland no longer sits on the Westminster sidelines, sending a message. Remember that, the height of the SNP ambition. No, Scotland is in government. A new generation of Scots. Michael Shanks leading the way on clean British energy. Douglas Alexander fighting for Scottish businesses in a challenging world. Kirsty McNeil standing up for Scottish interests at home and overseas. And Ian Murray from the lone Scottish Labour MP. to the Secretary of State for Scotland in a Labour government. And conference, look at the difference it makes. Fuel duty cut. The national living wage increased. £1,400 extra in the pockets of working people. Ending fire and rehire. Scrapping unfair zero-hours contracts. Strengthening maternity rights. Making work pay. The biggest levelling up of workers' rights in a generation. That's what change looks like, conference. And I am personally so grateful to so many of you here today, to Anas and to Jackie, and so many others, for your friendship, for your support, but above all, your leadership, your example. Because a victory like ours can sweep away memory and defeat. But there was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, when people said Labour could never win in Scotland again. When I became leader, when Anas became leader, that is what so many people thought. But conference, I never believed it because of you, the brightness of your conviction, the fire and determination to fight for your communities, a better Scotland in a Britain once again in the service of working people. And conference, let me repeat what I said during that campaign, that with Labour in power, there would be a government in Westminster, not just working for the benefit of the Scottish people, but working with the government in Scotland. And I meant that. Just days after the election, I was here, meeting the First Minister. I was very clear that while we will always have our differences about the future of Scotland, the first duty of my government is delivering for the people of Scotland. Scotland comes first. We won't play political games. We won't indulge in constitutional grandstanding. We won't lose our focus on what matters to the Scottish people, the work of change that's needed, on the cost of living, on immigration, on public services. And look, where the Scottish Government have different spending priorities, we won't block that ambition, as the Tories did. We will work with them. We believe in devolution, the democratic right of the Scottish people to take a different direction to Wales and England. That's what devolution means. But conference, while we will work with whoever the Scottish people elect, just imagine what we could achieve together. Imagine the possibilities for change if we end the 19-year SNP rule in Scotland as emphatically as we ended the 14 years of Tory rule in Britain. A Labour government in Westminster, a Labour government in Holyrood, with Anas Sarwar, the Labour First Minister. That's an offer we can take to Scotland with confidence, an offer grounded in a new hope and an old reassurance. And that's what we've seen this week with the announcement that Anas has made. A new determination to roll up our sleeves and reform NHS Scotland. The hope, finally, of a Scottish government committed to what the Scottish people want. The turnaround of Scottish hospitals, Scottish schools, and Scottish public services. We can take that message into the fight conference. We can turn the page on the cosy Tory and SNP arrangement, the pact of decline that has no interest in making devolution work, no interest in Scotland's success. But conference, in recent weeks, we've also seen that our old argument remains as vital as ever. that Scotland and Britain, standing together, united by the solidarity of working people, is the only way to face down the instability of the world beyond these islands, as it has always been. And on the eve of the third year of Russian aggression in Ukraine, I know that this conference, indeed the Scottish people, stand with the people of Ukraine. Because conference, peace only comes through strength. Nobody wants the bloodshed to continue. Nobody, least of all the Ukrainians. But after everything that they have suffered, after everything that they have fought for, there can be no discussion about Ukraine without Ukraine, and the people of Ukraine must have a long-term secure future. And conference, I've seen firsthand the devastation Putin has caused. Just a few weeks ago, I was in Keir. I met soldiers in the burns unit of a hospital who fought on the front line of freedom. I spoke to children who are growing up under constant bombardment. Some of them, primary school age, have lost their parents to the conflict. I've been to Bucha, the town where Russian soldiers handcuffed civilians and shot them in the head in cold blood. Trust me, conference, you don't forget a place like that. You don't forget the conversations that I had there. People who had to gather up the bodies of their friends, their family, their brothers and sisters, and wheel them into a mass grave using shopping trolleys. You don't forget things like that. But mark my words, what I have seen only makes me more determined to stand up for Ukraine, to put them in the best possible position and make sure they have the security and the hope that they need. And look, we can be proud that we stood up. I'm proud of the thousands of British families who opened their homes to fleeing Ukrainians. I'm proud that the yellow and light blue flutters on village halls the length and breadth of these islands. And I'm proud that we've shown once again that we are a nation that will not be cowed by threats or tyranny. But as we enter a new phase in this conflict, we must now deepen our solidarity even further. It's not just moral urgency that demands this. It's also in our national interest. Russia already menaces our waters, our online spaces, even at times our streets. And the economic insecurity that the conflict has caused, the rising bills, cost of living crisis, that will only continue unless we have a resolution that is fair and stable for Ukraine. This is one of the great lessons of our history. Instability in Europe always washes up on our shores. And this is a generational moment. I've been saying for some time that we Europeans, including the United Kingdom, have to do more for our defense and security. The US is right about that. In this new era, we can't cling on to the comforts of the past. It's time to take responsibility for our security, our continent. And I'm clear that Britain will take a leading responsibility. We have to be ready to play our role if a force is required in Ukraine once a peace agreement is reached. And we have to be ready to reshape our economy with industrial policy, to stand up for Ukraine, to stand up for Europe, but most of all, to stand up for our security because Ukraine is vital to us. But to succeed in this endeavour, at home and abroad, we must commit fully to the cause of change, remove the blockages, tear down the barriers, focus each day on the fight for the priorities of working people. Now, what working people want hasn't changed. They want a stable economy, their country to be safe, their borders secure, more cash in their pocket, safer streets in their town, opportunities for their children, cheaper energy in their home, and an NHS that is fit for the future. But we can't underestimate just how little faith there is from working people most of all, that politics can still deliver this for their family. Because it hasn't. Not here in Scotland with the SNP, not in Britain with the Tories, and not, if we're honest, in many places around the world recently. But do not doubt that this project is right for our Times conference. Do not doubt that we will weather the storm and deliver for Scotland and Britain. If the question of this era is whether politics can serve the interests of working people, then this era demands a Labour answer, a Scottish answer. Now, a couple of weeks ago, and you may or may not have seen this, but scientists found a new inscription on the Galloway Hoard. And if you don't know, conference, that's a treasure trove of Viking-era objects found in Scotland. These objects are over 1,000 years old. They were found about 10 years ago. And it's taken a long time to work out what the inscription says on the treasure. This is what it says. This is the community's wealth. Conference, the soil we walk on has a life and a character. And this is Scotland's character. It's always been Scotland's character. The wealth of this nation belongs to the community, to every person. Now, that's what fired the imagination of the people who founded this party. That's what drove people who built this nation, who transformed our union into a bond across these islands, woven in the solidarity of working people. And it's that same cause which must now guide us to a better future together, a new hope for Scotland, in a Britain once again united by the interests of working people. But change will be hard, conference. Our job is to conserve what is precious in the here and now and seize the opportunities of the future. And nowhere is this clearer than in the clean energy transition. Now, I want to be crystal clear about this. I believe the transition to clean energy is a golden opportunity for Britain, especially for Scotland. That's exactly why we base GB Energy here where it belongs, in Scotland. So Scotland will lead the way. But you cannot come at this issue with simple principles divorced from the practicalities. No, this is a transition that must be managed pragmatically. Clean energy is a vital part of energy security. It strengthens our national security. It gets Putin's boots off our throat. But equally, the oil and gas in our waters is also vital for our security. So I repeat, oil and gas will be part of the future of Scotland for decades to come, decades. But it's not enough just to defend the jobs that are here now. We must also make sure we're at the front of the queue when it comes to the jobs of the future. Take Grangemouth, because that shows precisely the challenge. First, we must protect working people in the here and now. And let's be clear, we are. Every worker made redundant, every worker will get 18 months full pay. There will also be a skills and training offer, backed up with up to £10 million from the UK government. And any business within the Grangemouth-Freeport area that takes on these workers will get national insurance relief. Now, that is a comprehensive package, fair to workers, and a clear incentive for local businesses to retain the skills and talent within Grangemouth. At conference, we must also plan for Grangemouth's future. I've been talking to Anas about this, and I know we must do it quickly. Now, I said in the election that we will stand behind this symbol of Scotland's industrial brilliance, and that is what we will do. Grangemouth is not a charity case. It's not a problem to be solved. It's a huge opportunity for renewal, for this generation and beyond. I mean, just look at the assets. Access to the North Sea, a deep sea port, an effective grid connection, infrastructure links to the North East, a strategic location midway between Scotland's two major cities, world-class universities, a skills pipeline for the future, a £100 million growth plan already in place, a partnership between this government and the Scottish government, and we welcome their support on this, the accelerator money they announced earlier this week. But conference, we need more. I can't put into words just how much of an afterthought industrial policy was for the previous UK government. It's not a surprise, but it's still shocking. And yet across these four nations, my Labour government has already taken decisive action to protect good British jobs in the industries that are vital for our economic security, saving Harland and Wolff, investing in the future of Hitachi in the northeast of England, a new plan for an electric arc furnace at Port Talbot secured this week. Grangemouth is such an opportunity. It could have a future in bioengineering, biofuels, or in hydrogen energy. But I promise you this, it will not lack ambition on our side. So I can announce today, we will grasp the opportunities at Grangemouth, work alongside partners to develop viable proposals, team up with businesses to get new industries off the ground, and to attract private investors into the partnership we need. We will allocate £200 million from the National Wealth Fund for investment in Grangemouth, investment in Scotland's industrial future. That is the difference a Labour government can make. Thank you, conference. Thank you. Thank you. Because we all know what happens if we don't win this race. It's written into the fabric of every community in this nation. The skills jobs that disappear. The communities that lost their place in the world. Not just the security and dignity of their work, not just their pride and purpose, their identity. That's the price of inaction when the winds of change blow this hard. The price of losing the race for new industries. And look, this is political as well. If we don't show a path to the future, others will fill that void. In fact, they already are. A dangerous right-wing politics, even here in Scotland, that will say they are the ones who can tilt politics towards the interests of working people, even as their proposals do precisely the opposite. A politics which feeds off the failure of the free market, the failure of public services to reform, and above all, the failure to control borders properly. We have to be ready for this test, conference. Ready to point out that beneath their bluster, the alternative they offer is alien to working people. You want to know what Farage and Reform are doing on their rare visits to Parliament? They're voting against our Employment Rights Bill. They talk the language of workers' rights online and on the doorstep, but they voted against banning fire and rehire. They voted against scrapping exploitative zero-hour contracts. They voted against sick leave and maternity pay. And what about the NHS? They want to charge people to use our NHS. They claim to be the party of patriotism, but they're fawning over Putin. No, they are not the answer for working people in Britain. And they are not the answer for Scotland. And contrast that with what you've seen from Anas and Jackie this weekend. What you've seen from the difference we're making in Westminster. And it's day and night. Only Labour can make the difference for working people. Only Labour will put more money in your pocket. Only Labour will fix our broken economy. Only Labour will secure our border. Only Labour can save our NHS, put police back on your streets, give our children the opportunities they deserve. Only Labour can deliver change for Scotland. And if you want an example, just consider the budget. £47.7 billion for the Scottish Government. That's the biggest budget settlement in the devolution era. A stable foundation for the economy, more money for Scottish schools, more money for Scottish hospitals, more money for Scottish police services, more money for Scotland. And what did the SNP do? They voted against it. The same old SNP, gesture politics first, Scotland second. And, you know, before the election, I visited a food bank here in Glasgow with Anas. You'll remember it, Anas. People queuing on their way home from work because their wages were not enough for what they needed. And it's as if that wasn't scandal enough. I met a little girl there. She must have been, I'd say probably about 8 or 9 years old, full of life, bags of personality. And at the end of the session at the food bank, I was recording a piece to camera with an autocue in the back of the camera. And I saw her standing next to me, watching what I was doing, absolutely intrigued. It was fantastic. So I stopped, and I said to her, stand in front of the camera, look at the autocue, you have a go, see what it's like. I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, I don't read, me. She didn't know how to read. Now, I know what the SNP will say to this. They'll blame the Tories, blame Westminster, blame austerity. And trust me, conference, I do. But the SNP is out of excuses. We passed a budget to stop austerity, and they voted against it. So I won't take any lectures. Who's in charge of Scotland's schools? It's not the Tories, is it? I don't read, me. I don't read. Our conference, I believe in devolution. I believe in the power of the Scottish people to shape their future. But devolution should never be exploited as a cop-out, an excuse, an alibi for basic incompetence and failure. And the failure in Scottish schools, in Scottish public services, that's down to the SNP, and it's high time they took responsibility. So, yes, things are still tough in our communities. I understand that. I always said it would take time to turn this ship around. But I will contrast our record in 7 months versus their 19 years any day of the week. I will defend real wages rising, business investment, the highest for nearly 20 years, clearing the asylum backlog at a record pace, removing people with no right to be in this country, 2 million extra appointments so the NHS in England could cut waiting lists 4 months in a row, even in winter. So whilst the SNP whinge and look for someone to blame, we roll up our sleeves, we put in the cash, we do the work, we get the results. 2 million extra appointments in 7 months. That's our story of change. What is theirs? That's what you can do with a government that actually has a plan to reform our public services. And that's why Anas's announcements this week are so important. And there's more to come. We've invested £1.4 billion in local growth projects across Scotland, transforming Aberdeen city centre, improving connectivity in Dumfries and Galloway, upgrading the V&A at Dundee, regenerating town centres across Scotland, a new ferry for Fair Isle, more money for transport connections, more projects that will change the length and breadth of Scotland. That is the difference a Labour government makes. Because the political road ahead is about one thing and one thing only: delivering change that the working people of Scotland can feel, more confident in their future, more security in their lives, valued and respected, not just by the government, also by Britain. 4 nations standing together, bound by the solidarity of working people, showing them that this is a government that can be and must be and will be on their side. That is how we serve the people of Scotland conference. That is how we will win again in 2026 and make Anas Sarwar the First Minister of Scotland in a Britain that puts working people first. Thank you so much, conference. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, conference. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Keir, for that great speech. Thank you. Conference, if you're leaving, can you do so quietly and quickly, please? We're just waiting on the last few people leaving. If you could do so quickly and quietly, please. Thank you.
Which is good.
Conference, can I bring you back to order? Thank you. Conference, our debate session this morning is in a new direction for people and planet. Before we begin our final debate session, can I give a heartfelt thanks not only to our CLPs, trade unions and affiliates for bringing these motions to conference, but also to all our delegates for moving, seconding and speaking to these. You should all have the motions by now. So during this morning's debates, conference will consider the following motions. Motion 24 on clean energy, submitted by Eastwood CLP. Motion 25 on workers' power the future, submitted by GMB. Motion 26 on clean rivers and seas, submitted by Edinburgh Central CLP. Composite motion 5 on Grangemouth Refinery, submitted by Unite and Scottish Young Labour. As before, I'll call each motion one after the other during the debate and invite speakers once all motions have been moved and seconded. Speakers are welcome to speak on any of the motions moved in this debate session. As before, each delegate moving a motion will have 5 minutes and seconders 3, and I would ask people to stick to time. Conference, can I now welcome Sarah Boyack, MSP, Shadow Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero, Energy and a Just Transition to open this debate.
Conference, we are now at a challenging political moment when it comes to climate action, because where once there was a level of consensus, now we see pushback from the hard right against the urgent need to address our climate emergency. Opportunistic voices are trying to drag a globally and scientifically acknowledged challenge into the language of culture wars and use it to drive wedges of division where we should be united. So let me say this unequivocally. Scottish Labour will continue to fight our nature and climate crisis, and we will deliver a new direction for both our people and our planet. Because make no mistake, our planet is in need of desperate action. Last year, the planet surpassed 1.5 degrees, the impacts of which are already being felt in heat waves, fires, flooding, droughts, and extreme weather and global instability, and here in Scotland as well. So it's absolutely vital that we in Scotland play our part in tackling the climate emergency. But in Scotland, the SNP's record is one of inaction, delay and distraction. 9 out of 13 annual climate targets missed. Climate funding raided year on year. And chaotic leadership that achieves nothing but a lack of direction and has led to failure after failure. We are damaging the planet by that lack of inaction, and we need a new direction as soon as possible. But climate has to go hand in hand, tackling that emergency with workers' jobs being protected. And our oil and gas sector, as Keir said this morning, will be with us for decades to come. And a Scottish Labour government would make sure that we maximise the skills, the knowledge of our fantastic workforce, but also to deliver on a clean and renewable energy future. So we need workers now to drill for geothermal heating, to retrofit homes, to build wind turbines, transmission infrastructure. We need subsea engineers and substations and a workforce to restore our peatlands at a much faster pace than we're getting now. We can't have a renewable future, though, without a vast, skilled and energised workforce taking us there. And we've just heard the lengths that a Labour government will go to from Keir Starmer to protect our workforce, ensure that a just transition isn't just a buzzword, but it's an action plan that actually puts people and planet at the heart of our action. UK government funding for Grangemouth and the Falkirk Growth Deal is delivering a training guarantee, giving upskilling, reskilling training for workers now. Businesses in the Forth Greenport who take on previous workers from Grangemouth will get a national insurance holiday break. That's action now. Keeping vital skills in Grangemouth and Falkirk. That is Labour funding, and that is giving confidence for the investment that the workers need there now. But our Labour government knew that more than that was needed now to secure Grangemouth's future. And that's why Keir's £200 million announcement of investment in Grangemouth from the National Wealth Fund is absolutely critical. Money to attract investors, create the new innovative industries that people are calling for now, so that we can see Grangemouth given a new direction for our people. And that is what Labour is delivering, that is what Labour will deliver. A Labour government intervening and delivering now. And that's not all a Labour government has done since being elected 7 months ago. It's only 7 months. They've reformed consenting. They've started nationalising our trains. They've ended the de facto ban on onshore wind in England. And they've broken down the barriers for developing modular nuclear reactors. That is Progress Conference, a sustainable workforce, powered and benefiting directly our communities. That was one of the 5 pillars of our election campaign, and our Labour government has been delivering that from day one. But the full potential of a Labour government can only be achieved with Scottish Labour in Holyrood and with Anas Sarwar as First Minister. So we need to deliver that change. A Labour government in Scotland would continue in the build work that our colleagues have been doing in Westminster. The work of Michael Shanks, absolutely inspiring. You've already heard what we are committed to. In Scotland, we have said that we will scrap peak train fares for good. But that is just the first step. Scottish Labour will deliver a modern transport network that will make sustainable transport an affordable and accessible option for everyone. I am personally really proud of the fact that Scottish Labour introduced free bus passes for the over 60s. And I 100% support free bus passes for the under 22s. But as a young person said to me recently, there's not much point in a free bus pass if there's not a bus to use it on. He could not have been more right. We need change now. So our UK government is also committed to tackling the challenge of delivering on community ownership of renewables. It's going to be a core part of delivering that clean power by 2030 mission. It's also a really ambitious goal of 8 gigawatts of community-owned renewable energy right across the UK. And Scotland is utterly best placed to deliver on that. I've seen inspiring schemes right across the country, from Point and Sandwick in Lewis, to Aberdeen Heat and Power, to Edinburgh Solar Co-op. Those projects are there now, but we need every community in Scotland to make that benefit, to see the economic benefit, to see the community benefits, and they urgently need that stake in the power schemes that we are going to develop for the future, so our homes and businesses also get community-supplied heat and power. So Scottish Labour will not stop fighting for a sustainable future that delivers both for people and our planet. building on the UK Government's Warm Home Scheme, investing in renewables technology, developing the skills of our workforce and harnessing Scotland's natural resources so that we can protect our spectacular landscapes, combat the disastrous impacts of climate emergency, and secure our planet's future for generations to come. Conference, it's absolutely clear that the SNP have failed at taking the serious action on climate and delivering a just and fair transition for our workers. So to deliver sustainable jobs now and in the future, we need a Scottish Labour government elected in 2026, just over a year now, and we need Anas Sarwar as First Minister. Only then can we deliver a new direction for Scotland. So let's make it happen. Let's work together and deliver it next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for that great speech. Can I ask delegates who are moving and seconding motions 24, 25 and 26 to be prepared to come forward, and all other delegates moving and seconding motions in this debate to make themselves known to the stewards. So can the delegate moving motion 24 come to the rostrum, please?
Chair, Conference, Maura Buchanan, Eastwood, CLP. Climate change is arguably the greatest challenge of our times, despite the disinformation coming from some of the would-be world leaders. In May 2019, SNP, speaking for Scotland, declared a climate emergency, one of the first countries to do so, and that is that we recognise that climate breakdown was causing serious damage around the world, a declaration that gives us a duty to act to safeguard the world for future generations. So where are we now, 5 years on? Only this week, the First Minister admitted that not enough has been done to tackle climate change. They've only been in power for 18 years. He invited an audience of environmental experts to meet with him in the beautiful Botanic Gardens in Glasgow, telling them that the Scottish Government could and should be better on reducing planet-warming greenhouse gases. Now, the audience were filled with anticipation, fully expecting to hear his plans of action to address the climate change priorities. But what did they get? He made a rallying call to them as environmental experts. You should be brought together to discuss it. Well, I'm sorry, the time for discussion is over. Action is needed. We've had commissions, we've had consultations, we've had plenty of warm words, but a lack of meaningful actions. The Scottish Government committed to deliver a series of just transition plans focused on the built environment, construction, transport, land use and agriculture. The aim being that just transition tackles inequalities and promotes fair work. We're still waiting. Just transition plans have not yet been published. Now, as the daughter of a miner in the Lanarkshire coalfield, now defunct, I mean the mine's not the daughter, I also worked at Ravenscraig in Motherwell when it was Colville Steel before nationalisation. So I know only too well the impact of impact on abandoned industries, workers thrown in the scrap heap with no future, whole communities hollowed out. Not just the immediate employees, but the small supporting businesses, like the newsagent that you picked your paper up on the way to work, the butchers where you got your food coming back home, many small local businesses that supported community industry. Unjust transmission and transition destroys the whole community. It destroys lives. The time for talk is over. SNP cannot be trusted to deliver just transition to clean energy. SNP has already dropped the annual targets because they knew they couldn't reach the first lot. They've slashed funding. They scrapped Green Jobs Fund. In Conference, clean energy projects are stuck in planning hell. So no plan, no strategy, still delaying meaningful action. Conference, the fact is that the SNP cannot be trusted to deliver clean energy for Scotland. On the other hand, already, only 7 months in, the elected Labour government has set up GB Energy, centred in Scotland. The bill is now with the House of Lords. Labour is actively encouraging investment to clean energy projects in Scotland. Labour has committed to expand community ownership and to prioritise skills and reskilling projects. I'm pleased to see that Labour is getting on with addressing the climate crisis and our move to clean energy by 2030. So, Conference, I move the motion and I ask that you support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask the seconder of motion 24 to come forward, please? Is that from the floor? So that's been seconded from the floor. Can I ask the mover of motion 25 to come forward, please? Is there a mover for motion 25, workers, the GMB? Yep.
Morning. John Dolan, GMB Scotland, delegate, moving motion 25. Workers' power, the future. Chair, delegates. Conference, one thing we all agree on is that the energy transition must and will happen. It is already happening, but just transition has become a hollow phrase without action, driving up costs and driving down jobs. Last year, workers at Harland Wolff, Arnish and Metal Yards faced closure again. Thankfully, the deal struck with Navanta has given them a lifeline and should serve as an example of how Scottish and UK governments must work together. But for those workers, there is still a long way to go to guarantee their futures and realise the promises made by politicians. It is not just to take Warren's words, but hundreds of millions of pounds of investment and a consistent order book. What few realise is that the vast majority of work undertaken at Arnish is in oil and gas subsea pipelines. It will take about 5 years for the necessary infrastructure to be put in place for offshore wind to be a core part of its workload. If we allow oil and gas to die, the workers at Arnish won't be saved. They will be given a stay of execution. Much like Arnish, jobs promised through the GB Energy will take time, 20 years for just 1,000 jobs, according to the GB Energy Chief Executive. At the current rate, alongside North Sea platforms, workers will also be put on the scrap heap. The energy transition is inevitable, but job losses are not. But with the planned closure of refining at Grangemouth, the costs of a failed just transition are already apparent to the public. As a party, we must listen to voters, look at the polls and recognise that the discussion around the net zero has changed. We cannot continue repeating the failures of the past. We will become another failed government, making decisions on an increasingly smaller room and out of touch with each day-to-day lives of the country. Oil and gas will be needed for decades to come. Gas in particular is needed to heat homes of millions. If we don't produce, we will be relying on other states when the world is entering a period of political and economic instability in the East and the West. Excuse me. Oil and gas will eventually end, but the fundamental question that all party members have a responsibility to answer is this: if we need oil and gas, who should produce it? Should we rely on other countries to meet our energy needs by imports with increased costs, allowing them to benefit from the jobs and taxes? Or should we produce it ourselves securely at home, creating highly skilled, well-paid employment, investment in our public services and renewable supply chains of the future? Conference, support this motion. I move.
Thank you very much. I call the delegate moving motion 26 to come. Sorry, that motion has been formally seconded. Can I call the delegate moving motion 26? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Alex Martin, representing Edinburgh Central CLP and a first-time speaker at conference. Thank you very much. Conference. When I was a kid growing up in Kilmacombe, I used to play in the river near my home, building dams, splashing about, feeling like I was part of something bigger. It was a simple joy, but today, if I had kids, I'm not sure I'd let them anywhere near that water. And that should shame us all. Scotland is a country defined by its waters, our lochs, rivers and seas. Yet now, Nature Scot tells us we are one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. A third of Scotland's seas may be designated as marine protected areas, but less than 5% of our coastal seas are actually protected from bottom trawling and dredging. What kind of protection is that? We know the scale of the problem. An Edinburgh campaign group said that 81% of tests they carry out on the sea at Portobello Beach in Edinburgh show E. coli and fecal matter above the Scottish Environment Protection Agency's safe limits. This is seen across Scotland. Industrial trawlers are free to tear apart seabeds, even in supposed protected waters. The climate impact to this of fishing is significant, damaging the vital marine sediment that stores 18 times more carbon than is stored on land. Cruise ships sit idling in our ports, belching out emissions equivalent to exhaust fumes of 34,000 idling lorries every day. And what has the SNP government done? Not enough. They have failed to develop the required fisheries management plans, delaying the sustainable management of key fish stocks in Scottish waters. They tout environmental commitments, and yet our waters remain polluted. Protecting our seas and rivers is essential to achieving the 30 by 30 commitment, aiming to protect 30% of our land and sea by 2030. Currently, these protections are insufficient. That's why Scotland Labour must take a stand and commit to real action and a new direction. End the routine dumping of untreated sewage into our rivers and seas, with clear rules on emergency conditions, full monitoring of storm overflows, and a plan to ensure public swimming areas meet excellent water quality standards. Deliver sustainable fisheries management with catch limits set within scientific recommendations, and ban dredging and bottom trawling in marine protected areas. Introduce a fair fisheries management system that allocates quotas based on sustainability, with remote electronic monitoring and stronger enforcement to stop illegal practices in Scotland waters. Tackle cruise ship pollution. Ships docking in Scotland must switch off their engines and use low carbon onshore power so that coastal communities aren't left breathing in toxic fumes. This is about environmental justice, but it's also about economic justice, because it's not the water company execs or industrial trawler bosses who suffer when our rivers and seas are wrecked. It's the communities who rely on clean water for tourism, for fishing, for their livelihoods. Scotland is famous for its natural beauty, but if we don't act, we'll be famous for something else: sewage warnings and collapsing ecosystems. So let's not settle for a Scotland where wild swimming means taking your chances with E. coli. Let's not accept a government that watches this happen and does nothing. Conference, let's get serious. Let's clean up Scotland's waters, let's make these protections real, and let's fight for our environment, not just for today, but for generations to come. I urge you to support this motion.
Thank you very much, Delegate. That motion has also been formally seconded. Can I invite the delegate moving competent motion 5 to the rostrum, please?
Chair, Conference, Heather Gilfillan, Unite Delegate, moving composite motion 5. Conference, Grangemouth is one of the greatest tests of this just transition process. I'm sure we all agree Petro Earth has made a totally premature and needless decision to earmark the closure of the refinery during this year. We heard Keir's announcement earlier, but make no mistake, this refinery closure will be an economic earthquake which will be felt for generations to come, not only for today's workers, but their children and those of the wider community. It's a betrayal of their future. We believe there are credible and viable options on the table. Unite has been arguing for some time now that government can and must take a transition stake in our domestic energy production and supply when it's essential. If a just transition means anything, then it must be managed in an orderly and organised way to avoid the industrial destruction which was unleashed in the 1980s. The industrial reality is, Conference, that any projects and jobs created through Project Willow will not come in time to protect refinery jobs. That's why Unite are demanding a pause in the refinery closure and an independent review to assess Unite's transition plan for Grangemouth. Unite's transition plan identifies several viable pathways for the use and the production of sustainable aviation fuel. This would save jobs, but also be a fantastic asset for Scotland. SAF and other biofuel production can be developed at Grangemouth Complex starting today with government backing. This includes HEFA, which uses fats such as cooking oil, and this is available at scale today. HEFA could be running in just over a year, and it can be co-processed with other products to establish an immediate and cheap transition step. Other pathways are also open to Grangemouth over the next 5 to 10 years, such as power-to-liquid technology. But the critical point here is, Conference, that technologies can work together to establish a managed and phased pathway for Grangemouth. The mandated targets for SAF means that airports are crying out for this product and demand will just keep growing. Scottish airport bosses are telling us it's imperative to produce the product here in Scotland, and Grangemouth is primed to deliver it. This would ensure that Scotland and Scottish businesses are not reliant on imports and the higher financial costs for business and consumers alike associated with bringing it in on tankers from countries as far afield as China, not to mention the substantial transportation emissions associated with importing. Repurposing a refinery can reduce costs by up to a third compared to building a new facility from scratch. Studies have found that repurposing costs can total as little as 20 to 25% of the cost of establishing a brand new facility. Other repurposed refineries have had no job losses and have preserved jobs, even creating new jobs around the different countries. Contrast this, Conference, with the potential job loss of nearly 3,000 if Grangemouth refinery closes, and with it £403 million evaporating from the economy, the equivalent of £2 billion being lost over the next 5 years. It makes economic and industrial sense to look at how we can deliver this plan rather than shutting down the refinery and throwing workers onto the industrial scrap heap. A phased transition starting today into biofuels can allow the Grangemouth site and its existing assets to be repurposed and not dismantled. We would ask Conference to support Unite's three-phase proposal. First, an immediate pause to the refinery's closure, an independent review into the current state of the refinery, along with detailed transition plans, which keeps all options on the table. This is the moment for Labour to demonstrate its commitment to the Grangemouth refinery workers and to oil and gas workers, a commitment which demonstrates that Labour will now not allow industrial vandalism at mass scale to take place on its watch. We ask Conference and Scottish Labour to support the refinery workers, support a just transition, and in doing so, we can together keep Grangemouth working.
Can I ask the seconder for Compensate Motion 5 to come forward?
Peter Lally, Scottish Young Labour, first-time delegate, first-time speaker, seconding Composite Motion 5. First of all, I'd like to thank our friends at Unite for proposing this motion and for all they do to support workers across Scotland, the wider UK, and in particular Grangemouth, where they have been at the heart of the Keep Grangemouth Working campaign. Conference, the dire situation facing Grangemouth should be a surprise to no one. And it is no surprise either that the SNP and Tories are attempting to put the blame at the feet of a Labour government that is only 7 months old. They knew it was coming for years, yet they did nothing. And that failure speaks to their neglect for an entire generation of young people who would be robbed of good, unionised jobs and stable career prospects. Conference, under their watch, apprenticeships would be lost, forcing so many young people out of their route to success and into unsecure and low-paid work. Jobs in the local economy, jobs for those who feed the workers and who help to get them on their way, would be lost if the refinery closes, damning an entire community of working people to unemployment. Conference, the cost of living is hard enough when you have a job, but without one, many will be left destitute and without the means to support themselves or their families. Conference, we have seen the UK Labour government's strong commitment to Grangemouth and the local area through the Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal that is worth £100 million in total. It is through this deal that the government has funded the Skills Transition Centre that will train young people for the jobs of tomorrow and support them through any tough times to come. It is through this deal that the government has invested almost £10 million to create a hub that will support Scotland's industrial future for the long term and enhance the skills offered to people of all ages in the local Grangemouth area. Conference, the Prime Minister's announcement this morning shows the ambition Labour has for Scotland's industry, an additional £200 million from the National Wealth Fund to secure the future of Grangemouth and Scotland's key industries. And Conference, while doing that, we must also put young people's futures, livelihoods and hopes at the forefront of decision-making. That's what the Labour Party stands for. That's what this UK Labour government is all about. The UK government is committed to engage in joined-up thinking in order to put Grangemouth at the heart of a truly just transition and the UK government's growth mission. Conference, I urge you to support this motion because the people of Grangemouth don't have a second to wait. They need action, and they need it now.
Thank you very much, Delegates. This is an important debate. I'm going to try and get as many people in as I can, but I'm kind of in your hands. So you do have 3 minutes to speak, but if you can speak shorter, then the more people I can get in. So can I see hands for those that want to speak? I'm going to call Brian. Robbie.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Conference. My name is Brian Leishman, and I have the honour of being the MP for Allowing Grangemouth, home to the Clackmannanshire and Dunblane CLP and also Falkirk East CLP. We are also home to Scotland's only oil refinery, and a community that has been frankly neglected and ignored by both Tory and SNP governments. So, Conference, firstly, I welcome our Prime Minister's announcement today. The refinery workers, their communities and all of Scotland really do need a Labour government. And while today's promises and commitments are vital, just as importantly, they are just a step in the right direction. And crucially, they must be delivered at remarkable breakneck speed. Because, Conference, workers have been issued their redundancy notices. Time is absolutely of the essence to build Grangemouth for the future. And, Conference, I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight the campaigning that the refinery workers have done in the face of incredible stress. Men and women with bills to pay, families to feed, they've still went to their work and kept Scotland moving. They've organised meetings and rallies and demonstrations and marches. They've taken to the streets of not only Grangemouth but also Edinburgh and taken their fight to keep their jobs, to retain the prosperity for their communities to both governments. They have been a credit to themselves, their families, their communities, and to the working class. Conference, in opposition, we made promises. We spoke about how our country and our communities desperately needed change. And we were right. Because for 14 long years in opposition, we couldn't deliver on the values that we as Labour Party members hold so dear. Values that we see and we act every day when we want to benefit society for the many. And Conference, now that we are in power, we absolutely must use it. So to both reiterate and to conclude, today's commitments are welcome, but they are a start. Just a start and a step in the right direction. And we must move at breakneck speed. So, Conference, let's get to work.
Thank you, Chair. Conference, I'm Keir Quinn. I'm the Labour candidate for Eastwood in 2026, and I'm a first-time speaker. I'm speaking in support of the motion on clean energy. The map of Eastwood, where I hope to represent, is made up of suburban homes where many families move to enjoy beautiful green spaces and excellent schools, and the other half of the map is made up of renewable energy infrastructure at Whiteley. Local people enjoy using the pass around Whiteley to walk our dogs, grab a coffee, or perhaps blow away the cobwebs after too many drinks at Conference. While many residents, the SNP have enjoyed making claims about being climate leaders with targets that are more ambitious than the rest of the world, but the reality is they've not backed up the targets with any kind of substantial action. In fact, their misguided moratorium on nuclear power, they've set Scotland back 20 years in terms of clean energy. They've lost billions of pounds of investment, and they've lost hundreds of skilled workers who have to travel from places like East Renfrewshire down to Suffolk to work at Sizewell. Last year, the SNP were forced shamefully to drop their targets because the Climate Change Committee found that due to a lack of action on their part, the targets are now unachievable. They have no plan to decarbonise transport, no plan to decarbonise heating. They have no plan for industry, no plan for a just transition, and no plan for agriculture. In short, they're failing at just about every level in tackling the climate emergency. The UK Labour government has taken more action in the first 7 months than the Tories did in 14 years, or the SNP have in almost 2 decades. We've ended the ban on onshore wind. We've introduced the GB Energy Bill. We're reforming planning for renewable projects and announcing the goal of clean power by 2030. But for Scotland to truly be a world leader for climate action, we need a Scottish Labour government at Holyrood. A greener future is one that will bring countless positive benefits to Scotland, from cleaner air to warmer homes to greener jobs and cheaper energy bills. A future built on clean energy is one that Scottish Labour can ensure benefits all of Scotland, but we need a Scottish Labour government to make that a reality. Reactionary populism is trying to make caring about the planet a culture war issue. We should resist such thinking at all costs and continue to champion climate action at every possible opportunity. The signs of climate change are pressing, from wildfires in California to drought and famine in Somalia to Stormy Owen here in our own communities, in our gardens and disrupting our travel infrastructure. Conference, now is not the time to shrink away from climate action, but to embrace it head-on and to elect a Scottish Labour government next year who will put this as one of our priorities. Thank you.
Conference, Robbie Burgess, Unison. I'm also a chair of Falkirk West CLP. First, I know there's 2 other young people in the audience that are from Falkirk, and I'll try and make this quick because I hope they can be able to get a chance to take part in this debate. Conference, even though the Prime Minister today has announced what he has announced, it is welcomed. But we should be saving the refinery and saving the workers' jobs. The Labour Party was made by the workers in the trade union movement. And I think it's shocking that people are about to receive redundancies in P45s. Because if the refinery goes, Grangemouth is going to be a ghost town and there's going to be nothing left in it. I'm a social care worker in Grangemouth, so I see what the community's like. If it goes, it's gone, and we can do nothing about it. And those skilled jobs are lost, apprenticeships are lost, and young people's futures are gone. Because young people want to work at the refinery, but they can't, because it's about to close. So I think we need to do more and stand with Unite Workers as much as we can, all the way up to the end, and fight with them even harder than we are, and stand in solidarity with them and the workers, even though the refinery may close, but I've still got faith that the fight can keep going. Thank you, Conference.
Thank you, delegates. I'm going to take the young member over there that had hand up and looking for a couple of women. Speaker there, I'm looking for another woman.
Alex Copeland, Falkirk West, first-time delegate, first-time speaker. As a young person from Falkirk, I am acutely aware of the limited opportunity that every young person in my area faces. Many of my friends will leave school as soon as they obtain their National 5s, with traditional education being ill-equipped to meet their needs and interests. We've often talked about what we'd like to do after leaving school, and a lot of people want to work in energy or industry. One of my closest friends is worried for his future if the refinery is shut down. Today's announcements by the Prime Minister are very welcome, but however, allowing the refinery to close would be an exceedingly detrimental decision by the government, as it would mean not only that nearly 3,000 jobs are lost immediately, but it would mean that my generation will be unable to find purposeful industrial work in their local community, as the refinery is the only local industrial employer. And looking past what would be a huge loss in jobs, the closure of Grangemouth would leave Scotland entirely reliant on imports of oil, as there are no more Scottish oil refineries. There is nothing else left in the way of refining capacity. When talking to voters on the doorstep, one of the things that gets the best response is public investment in the local area, because it's something that everyone desperately wants and knows that the area needs. Being able to stand on someone's doorstep and talk about the importance of saving the refinery and investing in Falkirk High Street and promising that we would help and that we would deliver it were some of the most valuable conversations I had during the general election. Another important conversation that we had in the doors was telling voters about the amount of public investment we were going to put into the energy industry in the way of GB Energy and the National Wealth Fund. These conversations and these policies will have won as many votes all over Scotland. The people who have made this horrific and short-sighted choice, and the people who are most to blame for this decision, are Petra Innes and Jim Ratcliffe. They simply do not care about the workers or the people of the local area. They only care about making themselves richer. This is why it is vital. This is why it is vital to the refinery workers, the people of Falkirk and Grangemouth, and to us as the people of Scotland that we continue to push both the Scottish and the UK governments for a clear position on the closure of the refinery, for strong and proactive action and for support for the workers of Grangemouth, whether that be the current employees, those whose jobs are supported by the refinery, or those whose future careers rely on the refinery. There are a multitude of options that the government can take to save the refinery and the jobs in the local area. We must look to new options for the refinery, such as nationalisation or transition to SAF. We, as members of the Labour Party and trade unionists, must call upon the government to do more for Grangemouth and the wider community. We must still be pushing the government, the one that we all fought to get elected, to do more for us. Job losses are not just, they are not fair, and they are not right. There is no just transition where there is job losses. Thank you.
Andrea McGowan, Cunningham North, putting our support behind motion 24 for clean energy. We have had enough of failed promises around energy. Take our new LNG gas ferries, not only making ferries that are too big for our harbour, our government have made the change to Ardrossan Harbour to Troon. These are an example of how we have failed when it comes to clean energy. With constant delays to the Ardrossan Harbour repairs, there is nowhere to store this LNG gas at Troon, which means not just months but years we have to ship the LNG gas from Qatar to Milton Keynes and on a daily basis drive it from Milton Keynes to Troon. This is just one of the many ways in which the Scottish Government have promised that they will deliver clean energy, but actually it just looks good. We have the headlines of these wonderful big ferries, dual fuel, costing hundreds of millions of pounds to the taxpayers, but actually they are costing hundreds of millions of pounds more to transport this fuel to Troon. So this is why we are calling, putting our support behind motion 24 and ensuring that the government has a new direction, that we start actually producing clean energy and not just making flashy headlines around gas and energy. Thank you.
Good morning, Conference. Laura Jeffries, Nahiel Anir, first-time delegate, first-time speaker. Thank you. Unfortunately, and I do mean unfortunately, I'm speaking against motion 26 and advise that Nahiel Anir will be voting against this motion. While the sentiment of clean rivers and seas is an absolute necessity for a healthy environment, and the majority of the motion serves that, we need to be careful that we don't blunder into wielding blunt tools that have a negative impact in our rush to preserve. Management of seas and waterways is as varied and nuanced as land management and requires more flexibility and case-by-case assessment than the wording of this motion allows. Dredging and trawling will, yes, often cause damage, but there are situations and areas where it is required to encourage healthy biodiversity, and when managed well, it can support environmentally friendly seabed preservation. The wording of this motion, while well-intentioned, does not allow for the experience and knowledge of those who have worked in these environments for years to be taken into account. We are the party of rural proofing, meaning that these policies need to be developed in conversation with rural communities. If we don't acknowledge that there are good and positive practices that have been used sustainably for years by local communities, we risk undermining that. There's hard-won knowledge of local environments which needs to be included in our management strategies and policies, and in order to serve that, we need to be cautious of all-out bans. These policies need to be built into our conversations with our rural areas, who hold a wealth of understanding of the nuances present.
Thank you, and debate is healthy, comrades, so thank you for that, whatever way it goes. So that's been an excellent debate. Can I now ask Michael Shanks, MP, Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, to close the debate. Thanks, Michael.
good morning, conference. And can I start, first of all, with what I think is a message that I'll be repeating for the rest of my political life, which is to say thank you to all of you who came to Rutherglen 15 months ago to campaign. Because of you then and your hard work in the general election last year, we now have a UK Labour government, and I have the enormous privilege of serving as Minister for Energy. We fought that election on a very simple promise that no matter how difficult things were for people across the country, no matter how complex the challenges we would face, how chaotic the legacy we inherited from the Tories, things can and they must get better. But we know that the cost of living crisis has left a scar on our country. The failure of the Tories to deliver energy security left us all vulnerable to the rollercoaster of volatile fossil fuels. And rather than learning the lessons of that failure, as geopolitical tensions rise around the world, the Tories would rather double down and see us further exposed. We are determined to never let that happen again. And that's why we are going all out to end our dependence on fossil fuels and to build the clean, homegrown energy system we need here in Scotland and across the UK. Everything we are doing in the Energy Department is about that goal of economic change, making working people better off, giving them the security they need and the opportunities they deserve. And in 7 short months, we've shown that delivering on this promise means setting out our clean power mission, decarbonising our electricity system by 2030, not just because it's right for tackling the climate crisis, but because it delivers economic change, brings down bills, ensures our energy security, and provides the means to reindustrialise our communities. We held the most successful renewables auction in history, supporting some world-leading projects right here in Scotland, from floating offshore wind to tidal stream. 37 new projects in Scotland, giving the go-ahead thanks to this Labour government. And we did what the SNP said they would do 8 years ago, but have failed to do. We've set up a publicly owned energy champion, Great British Energy, headquartered in Aberdeen. A decisive shift from the past. A government no longer agnostic about ownership, no longer disinterested in industrial strategy, but one that recognises the inherent strengths of public ownership, delivering benefits for communities right across our country. And our UK Labour government has set about tackling the scourge of cold, damp homes. My colleague Miata Fambula leading the work on our Worms Home Plan in England. But the SNP that has responsibility for doing that work here in Scotland has shamefully failed to take action. More than a third of Scottish households are living in fuel poverty. And the SNP's answer to this crisis was to cut £200 million from the Energy Efficiency Fund. And that's why Scotland so badly needs a new direction, with ministers like Sarah Boyack leading the work forward to deliver the change that we need. But, conference, let me address the challenges that we faced as a government too. In my first week in this job, Ed Miliband and I faced the decision by PetroEneos to cease refining at Grangemouth. A decision, let's be honest, that had long been known about, but a devastating blow to the workers and to the wider community. We've worked with the Scottish Government to find a solution, immediately investing £100 million in the Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal, increasing that to deliver an additional £20 million on skills support for the workers, and to fund Project Willow to identify the sustainable economic future for the site. But we all know the precarious nature of Grangemouth was known about for years. Where was the planning from the last Tory government? Where was Grangemouth in the Just Transition strategy from the SNP? Where was the decisive action for all the years John Swinney sat round the cabinet table that he's demanded so much in the last few days? Two parties that have been missing in action for years. And so I wish we had been in government 5 years ago and could have moved further and faster. But in the 7 short months we have been in government, we've left no stone unturned to find a solution. And today's announcement by the Prime Minister confirming that there will be £200 million of investment from this government's National Wealth Fund, investing in Scotland's industrial future and in building the sustainable economic community that Grangemouth needs. Now, I know that the pace of this is important. I wish that we had been in power and could have moved faster, and I've heard the concerns from members at conference here today and many, many people who have made representations to us as a government. But I have to tell you that we inherited from the previous government absolutely no plans to deal with this whatsoever. And there has not been a week gone by where me or Ed Miliband or the Prime Minister or the Secretary of State for Scotland have not been working with unions, with the Scottish Government, with potential investors to drive forward a solution for the Grangemouth site. I recognise that decisions like the one made by Petro-Ineos are devastating to the workers, but what we have to do now and what we have been doing and what we will continue to do is to build the sustainable future for that site, to make sure there are good, well-paid industrial jobs in Grangemouth for decades to come. And we are determined that that wider transition will be prosperous and just, and that we learn the wider lessons from the SNP and the Tory failure to prepare. For decades, the northeast of Scotland has powered our country with oil and gas. The North Sea will continue to produce oil and gas for many, many years to come. And we will announce shortly how our manifesto commitment to not issue new licences to explore new fields will fit within a wider strategy for energy in the North Sea, recognising the enormous potential of carbon capture, hydrogen, offshore wind and much more sitting alongside our existing oil and gas. But, Conference, the truth is this transition is already underway. A third of jobs have been lost in the past 10 years. Now, the Tories would rather bury their heads in the sand and pretend that that didn't happen, that everything's fine and we can continue as normal. But all that does is put at risk even more of the jobs in this industry without securing the long-term future that they deserve. And so we are determined not to follow that course. We're determined to do things differently, to support the workers into good, well-paid, trade unionised jobs of the future, to build the industry of tomorrow in new supply chains and reshaping existing oil and gas supply chains into delivering the jobs in the renewable future, to invest in communities that I've spent a lot of time over the past 7 months getting to know and who I know are fearful of the transition that is underway. That's why we decided to headquarter Great British Energy in Aberdeen. It's why we're driving forward on an industrial strategy that will unlock investment right across the country. But, Conference, all of this will only make a difference if people are better off at the end of it. Our mission is clean power by 2030, but the driving purpose of that mission, the Prime Minister's constant challenge to me and to every single minister, is to bring down bills and to make working people better off. And so we'll deliver for communities with renewed community benefits from clean power infrastructure and a focus on community ownership in our local power plan driven forward by Great British Energy, to put communities in the driving seat of their own energy future. We'll move forward faster than any government on building the clean power system that removes our exposure to volatile fossil fuels and protects bill payers in the long term. The mission that we've set ourselves is hugely ambitious. It will be challenging. The infrastructure we need to build will not happen overnight. And delivering on this mission requires a fundamental rewiring of how government delivers difficult projects. And it will require collective action from industry, communities, workers, trade unions, supply chains and investors. Government cannot do this alone, but a collective mission across our entire nation will succeed, and the prize will be worth the effort. energy security, good jobs with good wages, reindustrialisation of all our communities, lower bills, climate action. That's the change that Scotland voted for last year. That's the ambition that Scotland needs now to unlock our enormous potential as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Conference, I will now invite delegates to vote on the motions debated in the sessions this morning. Votes will be taken in a show of hand, and if I cannot determine the vote clearly, the outcome of the vote will move to a card vote. So I'm just going to move straight to the votes. Comrades, on motion 24, on clean energy, the SEC position is to support. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Can I see any against? That motion is carried. Can I see motion 25? Sorry, you'll have to bear with me. The title is wrong here, but Workers' Power the Future, motion 25, the SEC position is to support. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Can I see any against? Thank you. That motion is carried. Motion 26 on clean rivers and seas. Can I see the SEC position is to support? Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Can I see any against? Thank you. That motion is carried. Comsite motion 5 on Grangemouth Refinery. The SEC position is to support. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Can I see any against? That motion is carried. Thanks very much. And thanks for an excellent debate. Conference, I would now like to invite Catherine Sangster, Vice Chair of the SEC, to the rostrum to give the vote of thanks.
Conference, what a fantastic few days we've had, full of energy, positivity and a relentless determination to deliver a new direction for the people of Scotland. Our fringe events were full of lively debate, and the speeches that we've heard here on this platform have been inspiring. Thank you to everybody who took part in our debates and participated. I want to thank Simon McFarlane, our excellent chair, all the venue staff, the stewards and G4S, Police Scotland for keeping us secure and safe, and all the sponsors and exhibitors. The technical team and the AutoCue team and our fantastic signers. A huge thank you to all our party staff. They literally never stop working hard for us, and we cannot thank them enough for what they've delivered here this weekend. Thank you to the CLPs and delegates. The motions that have passed will put working people first. This is the first conference for a very long time under a Labour government. In fact, for many of us, it's the first ever conference we have experienced. Conference, remember how we felt that night in July? We have worked so hard for that victory, and it took so long. We all campaigned for many years to make it happen. Now we only have a year to do the same again. The choice is clear: more of the same under Swinney, managed decline, or a new direction for Scotland under our fantastic team of Anas, Jackie, Sarah and our other MSPs. So we know what we have to do. Let's get out there, let's take this positive message out to our communities and every part of the nation, and let's deliver a new direction for Scotland. I will see you on the doors very soon. Thank you, Conference.
Thank you, Catherine, and good luck in your year ahead. Can I echo Catherine's sentiments and give my own thanks to all our members, volunteers and staff for the phenomenal amount of work which has been put into arranging conference. It's been a highly successful weekend and I hope you've all enjoyed it as much as I have. And before I adjourn conference for the final time, it's a pleasure, an honour frankly, to introduce Cathy Peaty to sing our song, The Red Flag. Please join in.
The people's flag is deep as red, is rounded off our martyrs' dead, and ere the limbs grew stiff and cold, their heart's blood dyed its every fold. Then raise a scarlet standard high, beneath its shade will ever die. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we'll keep the red flag flying here. With heads uncovered, swear we all to bear it onward till we fall. Come dungeons dark or gallows grim, this song shall be our martyrs. Like the Tory seers, then raise a starless standard high. Beneath its shade we'll live or die. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we'll keep the red flag flying here. Well done!
Thank you, Conference. Conference is adjourned. Safe journey home.